Happy Saturday and welcome into the SPL Phase 2 Week 1 Day 2. It is Finch and Mifflin on the desk first to break down everything that you can expect from this very first set. And obviously, I'm hyped here, Mifflin. I know you are as well. I can't imagine that chat is any less hyped because we got some big sets coming up today.
We do, man. I mean, SSG versus PK, Renegades versus Sanguine. It's going to be the battle of the best across the board. I'm pretty excited for it, and we get to see him rock some magical ADCs, I'm assuming.
Yeah, we'll see a lot of that. I mean, yesterday Cyclone Spin soloed the Fire Giant with Chronos and had plenty of health left to spare, so clearly you got to put some respect on their names. And you already talked about it. SSG and PK is going to be the very first set that we're looking at here today, and I'm really excited for this one because Spacestation had a strong Phase 1, but obviously not the performance they wanted at that playoff stages at MSI. So now is their chance, I think, to come back out and show us what they have in store. The only problem is they're going to be up against PK to try and get that done here, and that squad is one of the toughest, most patient ones I can think of. They're very willing to wait till the late game and just defend Phoenixes.
Yeah, and not to mention the reigning world champions. We got to put some respect on that name exactly. I think SSG is going to have some new tools in the gun here today. They've got a lot more ammunition. Mainly, I'm thinking Cthulhu for iRaffer. I feel like that fits his god pool very well. We haven't seen him use it just yet, so I'm going out on a limb, but my man likes to play gods like Kuzumbo and Bacchus, so an in-your-face god like Cthulhu, I think is going to be right up his alley.
You're exactly right. I mean, we saw Cthulhu get picked up yesterday by Snoopy. Maybe some questionable value there. Got much better in the late game. Love to see either one of these supports piloted, especially Neil, to talk about PK a little bit more here, because I think of Neil as one of those aggressive supports, just like PBM, Aurora, and oftentimes Rapper, but I think he doesn't have quite that same level of consistent success with it. I'm interested to see if we'll see Neil continue with that same type of aggressive play style or maybe switch it up here.
Man, I like Neil when he's playing aggressive. I like Neil in general, but for my money, I like it when he's playing the more supporty gods. When I think of Neil Ma, my mind immediately goes to Khepri, finding revives and tier 2 towers against enemy dives, and just completely turning the face of the game. PK's got plenty of tools, though. They've got Zapman, one of the most recognizable Smite players of all time. Paul, who is going to single-handedly be able to attract maybe 4 or 5 bans in P's and B's. They've got all of these guys that you have to watch out for.
Yeah, with how good mages are right now, having Paul on your team is a pretty tremendous asset. We haven't even talked about Kivo Fred yet. Remember, they lost their world MVP and just added perhaps one of the best players to ever touch the game. So I think that PK is a pretty stacked roster. But that's just what I think about it. I had a chance a little bit earlier today to sit down with Neil and see exactly where the team is standing heading into this set. All right, I got Neil Ma here, support for the Knights, quite obviously. And first thing I want to ask you about, man, is that going into Phase 2, how would you classify Phase 1 here for you all? I know you all didn't quite end up as high as you would want to, but would you say that it was a success? Phase 2 is worth a little bit more, so did you guys feel like you got enough out of it and you're ready for Phase 2, or do you wish that one had gone a little bit better?
We definitely wish Phase 1 went a little bit better. I think that we ran into Radiance, and they definitely were a really strong team. They were peaking around that time, and I think that our drafts weren't exactly as good as they should have been against them in particular. So I think we definitely could have done a little bit better Phase 1, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's about building towards Phase 2. And I think we did a really good job of gelling in Phase 1, even though our drafts, like I said, weren't that great at MSI. I think we still have a lot of awesome things to take away for Phase 2. And I think so far, so good. I think that we're going to be really strong coming into Phase 2. I think every team needs a little bit of a kick in the pants here and there. Pull up your pants again and keep moving forward.
All right, well, looking forward to seeing it. What about all the changes that have happened in the game with the mid-season patch? A lot of things are going to be different coming into this first week of play. How comfortable do you all feel with these changes? Do you feel like everyone has really grinded them out, or maybe there's still a lot to learn even through these first few weeks?
I think we've practiced against a few different teams, and there's been a lot of different variation in terms of picks, in terms of item builds, and it's kind of been a little bit of a learning process for everybody because there's a lot of new items, and the items right now I think some of them are really overtuned. That's going to be a matter of just trying to figure out like how to build properly, because there's a lot of lifesteal in the build, there's a lot of lifesteal in the game now too, and it's like you need anti-heal a lot of the time, maybe even sometimes way earlier against gods who wouldn't really expect it. So I think there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, but I think that's also pretty fun. I think, like I said, I think something could use some nerfs, but at the same time, it'll be around for a couple weeks, and it'll be a lot of fun just to see how it plays out.
There's definitely some strong stuff I think we'll see rise up to the top here, Neil. I'm right there with you. But what about, let's just talk about kind of the grind, because Phase 2, it's longer. I think everyone plays each other 3 times here instead of twice. Did you all get any time to sort of maybe chill a little bit during the break, or was it all Smite grinding and now you're right back into it for Phase 2 as well?
Yeah, for sure. We had a big break ourselves. Like, it was a month off, and I think the big thing for a lot of us was the patch changed so much, and so we took quite a bit of time off just because playing on the old patch, for me at least, felt a little bit stale. But now the new patch is out, it feels really refreshing and really nice. And it is a long grind too, so it's going to be about, not necessarily about pacing yourself 100%, but just keeping in mind the perspective that it is a long season, and as long as you make worlds and you show up, like, anything can happen, just kind of like last year. So it's going to be about just trying to continue to get better and better and better and better, and keep that as your end goal, not really smashing everybody 2-0 and just beating them in 20 minutes and then just not really learning anything from it. So it's going to be a long phase, but I think that we're going to have a good mindset going through it.
All right, last thing I'll ask you here, Neil. I'm sure that you all are prepped here for this match, and you like to try and do your same thing no matter who you're facing. But is there anything in particular you all are worried about here from Space Station? Maybe any picks that you want to make sure they don't get, or anywhere in particular you all looking for some pressure, or are you all just going to go business as usual?
It's kind of hard to tell what Space Station's going to do, just because I said, like, the meta is going to be quite different in terms of the picks. There are a couple things in mind that we're kind of looking out for, but at the end of the day, we're kind of just going to have to see and let it develop what's going to happen, because, like I said, we just don't really know what's going to be played, and Hera's also banned, so, Darda's Hera 1 trick's going to be out of there, so that's nice for us. My RDO 1 trick's out of there, so that's nice for them. But I think throughout the set, we're just going to have to kind of see what they value, because right now, to be honest, we're not really going to have too much of an idea. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Dardas in, like, some attack damage kind of character and just running it down mid. So we're keeping that in mind a little bit. But overall, it's just kind of like we have to wait and see what they throw at us, and then we'll probably react a little bit after that.
And you all have always been a very patient, sort of reactive squad, I felt. So that doesn't surprise me at all, Neil. I'm looking forward to see how you all end up playing. Good luck in your first match.
Thank you.
Lot to be learned about this current meta, but a team that I know that is always ahead of the meta and setting up themselves is Space Station, Mifflin. And I think that's why I'm so excited to see this team play, because you know if anyone is going to make their own decisions or their own sense of it, it would have to be SSG.
It would be. You say they make their own meta. I say they blatantly disregard the meta. I mean, Dardas in particular, we heard Neil bring it up. He just brought out Hera out of nowhere in Phase 1 and made it look like a very strong pick. So I think SSG might be a team that really does benefit from being in a state of flux in regards to the meta as a whole. When every other team is trying to figure out what they want to do, SSG is just doing what they want to do.
It's their greatest strength, man. When you're playing against SSG, you are playing their game. And no one better exemplifies that than Raffer. I sat down with him earlier for a quick interview. All right, I have Raffer here with me. Support for Space Station. I don't know what a support would be, but had a pretty good first Phase 1. Ended up second right behind Sanguine, and maybe not quite the way that you want to go out there with that Phase 1 playoffs with that drop to Ghost. So I wanted to ask you all, did you feel like the first phase was successful for you? You got enough out of it? Or did you think maybe that you all didn't quite get enough done? What's the team's mentality coming into Phase 2 based off Phase 1?
I think the phase itself was great. It was just MSI that became kind of a bit rough, I guess. I guess we just didn't prepare as well as we should have, and we kind of need to eliminate that going into this coming split now, and just try and be a bit more consistent.
And this is a longer split here for Phase 2 because everyone has to play each other 3 times. How did you all spend this offseason? Was it a lot of Smite grinding, or did you try to get in a little bit of, I guess, relaxation for the team while you could before this grind started up?
I'll be honest, it was a hell of a lot of World of Warcraft grind for me, Dardas, and Vote. There was a lot of it, but we're back on Smite now, grinding scrims again. Definitely not trolling them.
Sure.
So yeah, that's how we're spending our time right now.
All right, well, I'm sure there is a lot to get ready for now, though, back into Smite, because the mid-season patch changed a lot in terms of builds, in terms of, I think, which gods are viable in some cases, too. Do you all feel like you have a good handle on it already, or do you think that it'll take maybe a couple of sets or so to kind of see where everybody's landing with this new meta?
I can only speak for myself, really. Builds are like pretty much like just the same, not changed that much. There's a few items that have been added, a few new gods and stuff as support role, but my team's pretty on top of it when it comes to new stuff. I know they'll be the people who create the meta, so I don't really have any concerns about them.
Well, your first match is going to be up against the Knights, and they're always, I feel like, tough competition, even though they do end up somewhat middle of the pack in terms of their results. Are you all ready for their somewhat patient sort of play style, or how much are you all going to be adjusting here for the Knights in particular?
It's just one of those teams, isn't it, where they never finish at the top, but obviously at Worlds they did. But you can't count them out because they always come in swinging. I don't know how it'll go. We'll have to see. We're just going to play it by, like, take it one game at a time, just go from there to see how it is.
All right, well, I imagine you think that you'll be up at the top here at the end of the year for the standings. Do you have any predictions on what other team you think might be right there with you in that second spot or anything like that?
Ghost, really good team, and I don't know. I think any team could finish up top. Like, personally, I just
Really,
think
right? Yeah.
the league is like anyone's to take right now. Everyone's so talented. Just how the meta is and stuff too. I just think anyone can take it. It's how they show up on the game day, really.
I 100% agree. Good answer there, Raffer. I don't know if we've ever had it more competitive than we have it right now. Well, I appreciate you taking some time for me. Good luck in your next match. You're up against PK. I'm excited to see what you all do with this new meta. Well, you heard it there from Raffer. Anyone can take it here, and I got to agree with him. It's never been as competitive as it is right now, Myth. And I think SSG in particular, as Raffer said himself, are going to be one of the ones that are setting this new meta. That's why it's so interesting to get a chance to watch them early on and see what their first kind of feels are for what stuff is strong.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see it. Not only because there's a lot of stuff that was left on the table yesterday that I think we might see today, namely Ratatasker didn't really get selected at all. I want to see if we do see that god selected and which acorns we're seeing, where he's placed in the team comp. There's a lot that SSG can show us today, and I'm excited to see how PK bring it. I mean, these guys have very unique picks in general. Paul comes to mind. He has the Hebo pick. He's got the Hell pick. Maybe he starts to incorporate these magical hunters into mid. We saw some physical hunters in mid as well. And I know that Paul's got a lot of gods up his pocket.
He absolutely does. You're right. We're going to be seeing some unique picks here. So let's hop right in to those picks and bans. We shall delay you no longer. In that first pick position is the Knights themselves. And Myth, early on, do you think there's any advantage to being first or second? I feel like there are so many high-value picks that maybe you'd prefer to go second and take two in a row as opposed to that very first slot. Where do you come down?
It depends on how the ban phase goes, right? If you leave a lot of the meta picks open, almost always you want to go second pick. And right now, how the meta is, I think second pick might just have more value. Sure, you might give up a Freya, you might give up an Oleron, but what you get in return is the second pick of Magical Hunters, maybe Cthulhu or Ratatasker or an Arachne, something along those lines that have been very dominant right now. If I had my choice of it, I think I would go second pick just about every game.
Potentially get that counter pick towards the end of the draft phase as well. A lot of flexibility afforded over to the second pick. So far, though, things are fairly standard. A bit surprised that Soul is the first magical ADC that gets banned. I think a lot of people consider Freya and Oleron to be a little bit of a cut above those other two, but it looks like the Knights don't want to allow that Soul to head over towards SSG. They take it away right away alongside the Heimdall and the Aphrodite. Meanwhile, SSG banning away the Persephone and the Umoja. So as you mentioned, a lot still available. The Rat, potentially the Arachne or Baka. We haven't seen any of those auto attack based assassins, and then obviously plenty of mage ADCs out there too.
But instead, it looks like PK is going to hover the Cthulhu. I like the pick. And not only is it just a strong god in general, but it's a fantastic flex pick. SSG doesn't know if that's going to go to the long lane or the short lane. We've also seen a little bit of Cthulhu in the jungle, but for my money, not where his home really should be made. But this leaves a lot up for SSG. They get their pick of whatever magical hunter they so choose, or they could choose to forego it altogether. Either way, with everything still available as it is, PK should be able to get another pretty strong pick.
Amaterasu picked up early, so this is a bit of a flex pick, I would say, for SSG. We've seen Ama move around a little bit on the map. If they're not quite sure where this Cthulhu is going, maybe I would have been okay with waiting a bit later to completely lock in a solo lane pick, but can't go wrong when you lock in that Freya with your second selection for Space Station. I think this is what makes second pick so strong. You get to take a look at what the other team's doing, at what's available, and then get something like a Freya to add to your comp. Never feels bad.
And Freya's got a pretty gnarly matchup into Cthulhu. Cthulhu goes into the ult. That's a huge target. Freya's going to have Ring of Hecate. I'm 100% confident saying that. Likely a Typhon's Fang as well. Cthulhu, even with that knock-up CC, is just a huge, easy-to-hit target for Freya to heal up on. And that's all she's going to have to do in these team fights.
Is try to stay sustained. Remember, we saw that sustained from Typhon's Fang, Ring of Hecate, and the Lifesteal Boots helped Cyclone Spin get that FG yesterday, so you know the sustain is there. PK, though, don't head towards those magical ADCs right away. It's Ho Yi, and then the Morrigan picked up. We know what their backline is going to look like at this point. How strong do you think Morrigan is here right now, and is that strong enough to pick up in place of something like an Olaran?
With the recent magic item changes, Morrigan is very strong. Do more Polynomicon, Soul Reaver, that's all you need. Go into stealth. If you find the stun on Freya and she doesn't have beads, it's likely she's going to die before she even gets to react to you at all. That damage output is so insane. And then afterwards, the Morrigan can just turn into Freya. Suddenly the tables have turned. I like the pick so far from PK. I would have liked to see them try and take one of the magical hunters. I think it's very likely that SSG will try and ban out at least Olaran. But all together so far for PK's draft, it's very coherent. They've got a strong front line, they've got a backline dive mage, and Hu Yi should have very strong base defense if they do have to keep their Phoenixes up.
That's true. The Knights are very willing to play base defense, so the Ho Yi could be strong for them in that regard. I'm not so sure, though, with the Ho Yi and the Morrigan already picked, if PK are thinking about getting any magical ADCs. And it looks like SSG feel the same way. They banned the Robin, a jungler, and then Xing Chen, a support. So they feel as though Cthulhu is going solo, and they're trying to take some picks away from Cuvo Fred, and then obviously away from Neoma in particular. Now Space Station hovering the Amusin Cobb. Hunters are very strong right now. I think even ability-based hunters have room to shine. But AMC, were you expecting this one, Myth?
This is why I didn't try and predict really anything going into this draft, man. I mean, AMC is not something I was expecting to see. It wasn't something I was expecting to see in a Morrigan, especially. I mean, again, he's a very largely a mobile hunter who's going to be pretty free food for the Morrigan come late game. But I do want to highlight this Ratatasker pick for a second.
Yep.
Amaterasu, we've seen in the jungle a lot in recent times. Golden Blade really makes her a very potent pick there. This rat could be flexed towards support with one of the more defensive acorns. We could see this rat go into the soul lane. So far, I couldn't tell you where SSG's draft is going.
They got a ton of options, don't they? They love to maintain this flexibility throughout the entirety of their drafting phase. And I think they've done that now as PK luck in the Sobek and the Nemesis. So things come into view a little bit more. Cthulhu and Sobek could still bounce around a little bit between that solo and support. But the Nemesis coming in, obviously going into the jungle, a very strong auto attack based assassin right now, who we've seen build crit earlier in the SPL yesterday. What are you expecting from this Nim?
I really do expect to see some crit. We want some more burst damage. Right now for PK, it's really only the Morrigan who's going to blow someone up very quickly. So if Nemesis is able to bring a little bit of that, that will be very strong for them. The general failing of Nemesis is that she's lacking on CC, but you can see that PK is drafted around that completely. Cthulhu's got fantastic lockdown. Hu Yi has a stun. Morrigan has a stun. Sobek might be one of the best displacement guardians in the game. PK's draft is very strong. SSG, on the other hand, is almost like an unstoppable spear. Amaterasu is going to be holding W. Freya and Hebo doing the exact same. Ratatasker to set you up. Both teams are going to come out swinging.
Well, with that Hebo pickup, Rat has to be going somewhere other than jungle. I'm thinking, let's see it here in game number 1.
Thanks a lot to Finch and Mifflin on the desk there. Joining me on the cast will be Aggro. We've got two teams here on the opening weekend of Phase 2, taking a little look at exactly how much they have prepped, how much they have practiced, and how much they're trying to bounce back from their poor performances at the mid-season Phase 1. Ryan, as we look through the composition, are you surprised at all by where these are going? It's going to be Ratatosker support here.
Yeah, I thought that this might be the case for Ratatosker, man. I think he's got a lot of tools in support right now. I mean, you look at just the base kit. He's got a slow on the dash, a prot shred on the 2, a stun on the 3, and a knock up on the ult. That's a lot of CC and a lot of setup that you can bring to your team. But in the past, it was, well, I'm not scaling well enough. I'm not going to get tanky enough to actually be able to dash in and use my kit effectively as a setup sort of kit. But now with things like Thick Bark Acorn that gives you plus 10% protections, not 10 protections, 10% of your protections you get more of. And that's a huge deal. And it makes it so that whenever you deal some damage, you get some health back, and you now provide protections equal to to protection shred from enemy gods, and you get additional flurry. So now you can prot shred twice and get all those protections for yourself. And you get really tanky really quickly with this, and you still deal a lot of damage because the base damage on flurry is really strong already. I like it. I think it can be strong.
We'll see how it works out for Ratatoska here. Then start of the game, we did see the junglers and the supports pick up a hand of the gods as Ratha rooted in place early by the Maya out from this Cthulhu, which we get to see a little bit more of in the Pro League. And with a Morrigan back in action here for Paul, do we see double Cthulhu here today?
I think so. I think that's
Would
the
that
best
break the will?
transformation. Yeah, I'm hoping it works out pretty well is all I'm going to say. Because I haven't seen it quite yet. It seems very strong. I think that it's not the only good transformation, though, here for Paul. And that's usually what you want, is 1 to 2 good ones that you can have in multiple situations. If you're in some trouble, you can transform into Amma, or you can transform into Ratatosker and get out of your danger pretty quickly. You can transform the Nemesis in the 1v1 and be pretty unstoppable in that 1v1 scenario, or you could transform into the Cthulhu and be this unstoppable team fight machine alongside Neil Ma. So Neil might have to build a little bit of extra damage to make sure that transformation is actually being put to good use if that's where Paul's going to go, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think it'll be just fine.
Well, a lot of changes really happened, mainly towards itemization for anything but supports, pretty much, with how it's been looking. But the more interesting thing for me is how the map's going to play out, because the map has had a couple of changes here or there, Ryan. You know, I think the chalice in the jungle, very, very important these days, making sure you get that bonus gold, and I think that's something that we need to turn attention to, of how useful that is getting used. But at the moment, Ratha was camping a corner here, looking for a bit of a rotation damage onto Neil, but he didn't know Kivo Fred was round the corner. He's vote focused, but a beautiful banish will keep him alive for now. However, Kivo Fred with a dash and a slice and dice will end the life and give him first blood in the opening game of Phase 2.
And that's exactly what you need to do against Freya. Yes, she seems impossible to play against when you give her free lanes. And she is impossible to play against when you give her free lanes with how strong Hekate is right now. So just don't give her the free lane. Pick kill pressure. Cthulhu Hu Yi is perfect for that. They do a lot of damage. They've got good CC. Things like the Mire for Cthulhu, that giant root, it's perfect for Freya. What is she going to do? She has to whoop you out of it, and then if her whoop is down, that frees up Zapman to jump in regardless. I think that I love the way that Pittsburgh Knights are putting pressure on Vote early, but it's got to keep up. It can't just be that one first blood. It's got to continue now that he's a little bit behind.
Scary D just trying to hold on to this blue buff and actually loses it, but the good news is he delayed enough for Kivo Fred to arrive. Wet Paper, however, into play and slows them down, but Cherio just avoids that pluck, and now under the tower he goes back to safety as Scary D misses that pluck, and as you said, out of mana, a big key there.
And that's huge for the Hebo counter pick up against the Nemesis. I love this pick up against what is becoming pretty meta all of a sudden. Nem was prioritized a lot yesterday, and it seems like she might be again here today. That slow immunity is massive.
Nice little work out, Cherio, to support Nika, who's just trying to secure his own blue here and try and get away from danger, but he's going to fall down too to Scary D. And this is putting PK in a pretty decent position so far. So blue buffs were exchanged. However, Scary D has his now, which is something that he definitely still wants, even though, you know, Sobek's mana costs aren't all doom and gloom like they once were.
Especially once you get that hit level 5, get the ultimate, you regen so much mana from looking in the waters that pre-5 is when he struggles the most. At this point, he should be A-okay. But it's not a good decision by Nika and Cherry to stick around and try and defend on that blue buff. I think that that's one you just have to understand that you have to give up. Feels a little bit bad because you want to really be able to snowball this lane effectively, Amma against Sobek. But I think that that's one that's worst case scenario. Even if Nika gets the blue, I don't think he lives in that scenario. You know, he's not a jungler. He doesn't have Assassin's Blessing. He's not healing off of securing that buff. Just a bad call by SSG to stick around.
Now we do see Nemesis again today here, Aggro, and we saw him quite a bit. Saw her quite a bit yesterday too. Is it really because of the Golden Blade that we're seeing so much of her now? Is it clear that much more effective in the jungle?
It is. It helps her a lot. It opens up even more build paths on a god that I think already had a multitude of build paths available. And don't forget, she got buffed recently too. It's not like it was just these itemization changes for her. She also received some changes fairly recently. I believe it was a buff to the 2 base damage for her, which is a huge deal because not only does that help her when it comes to actually fighting, but it helps clear because that's the main clear ability. So it gets you to that Golden Blade a little bit faster and makes your fight once you have it a little bit stronger. And it makes it so you don't necessarily feel as bad building more auto attack base because you'll still get some damage left over on that slice of dice.
So far, so good for PK in the first 5 minutes. And as you can see there, Doug just pointed out it's the Evergreen Acorn. Why that one, right? What's the difference there?
Yeah, I thought for sure it would be the other one that gives the double flurry, but this is the one that we usually see soul laners pick up. It's the one that lets you trade the most effectively. And instead of getting 10% more protections, Raffer gets 10% more HP, which is still really strong as a tank stat, but it doesn't give you an extra effect more than just the bonus healing that you get on that Acorn. It might incentivize PK to get a little bit more anti-heal than they want because they don't have great characters at applying that anti-heal. But other than that, I don't think it's quite as effective. I think that this might signal that Raffer might not go for a whole lot of protections. Instead, he might try and pick up items like Sledge.
Health. Yeah.
A little bit more health-oriented.
Dardes in the jungle going to get picked off here as he was just trying to get his own red buff. Raffer does arrive to turn around towards Cubo Fred, but with Cthulhu alongside him really causing problems from Neil there, will force him back. And just to point out what you were saying there, I think you're right. I think he may go for a bit more healthy build in this rap because, you know, Nemesis, Divine Judgment, that shreds a lot of protections. Left-hand side, though, Vote trading with Zap a little bit. Both supports waiting in the wings, but Ultimate's on cooldown. Zap's not really winning this trade outright, though. However, with a whole minion wave there, Vote does end up having to fall back for the time being.
Interesting that Zap decides to rush the Devos in this matchup. Historically, in Hunter versus Magical ADC matchups, you see Hunters build boots first and then go into Bloodforge right away because Magical ADCs don't build a stacking item. They go straight for something like Hecate in this instance that gives them a big burst of power right away. And so a lot of Hunter players feel like they need to be able to match that with something like Bloodforge. It's more upright power, even though it's a little bit more expensive. But Zap trying to use the fact that his kit is just better at fighting early as the leverage point to get him to a stronger point with Devos. Devos, I think, are better whenever you stack them all the way up just because they provide so much more lifesteal, even though it is slightly less power. In the passive comes into play for Bloodforge as well, but if you have the choice between getting fully stacked Devos or Bloodforge, I think I would rather have the Devos. But in this matchup, I kind of expected Zap to be going for Bloodforge. So something to look out for, that he's going to be not as strong as Vote is, especially once Vote gets that Ring of Hecate online.
Well, just watching this game a little bit more from the outset, I've noticed the supports have kind of stuck to the dual lane a little bit more here than we've seen for quite a while, in my opinion. And that's actually allowing the mid laners to get quite a considerable lead. Notice that they're getting a bit more farm there over their Hunter counterparts in that position, which we'll see if that's really going to help them out. Morrigan and Moose and Cobb, I guess, both going to be impactful for that, but I'm a bit surprised that we're seeing so much babysitting of that dual lane. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, it's because the two mid laners are named Paul and Dardes. That's why. These
point.
two are superstars in this lane, and these teams have understood that, look, we just got to make sure that these two are comfortable and in a good position to carry, because if they can, they will.
PK looking to pull this Gold Fury in. There's Cthulhu ulting early. Ratatoska in the sky, looking to dissuade them from aggressing. The knockup was good, but it's not going to stop PK getting that Gold Fury. And now Raffer's trapped in a corner. The sun's right down and Zap wins the kill. And there's Paul, a second Cthulhu. I don't even know if the actual stacks from the passive continue, because I expect they would. And the damage from the knockup is going to slow Cherio down enough for Scary D to get in range for the pluck. Another kill for PK. Two, in fact, as well as the Gold Fury.
Yeah, so one Cthulhu ultimate feels impossible to beat in a team fight. So I don't know what the next step after impossible is, but that's what it felt like right there that Spacestation had to fight up against. That combo seems nasty to have to fight against, and I love the idea here from PK. They clearly came in with that as a top option, and I don't think of Paul as a Morrigan player. It's a talking point I wanted to bring up in this game, that Morrigan plays so differently than every other mage in the game, and you really have to play much more like an assassin than a mid laner. Yeah. And I don't know that that's Paul's strength. It's something I'm sure he's been working on in scrims up until this point, but until you do it in a real game, it's hard to say for sure. This idea of let's just transform into the Cthulhu and win every team fight because of it does take some of that pressure off of Paul. It's a lower barrier that you have to really pass, because Cthulhu Ultimate just kind of wins team fights by itself. You just become so tanky and bring so much utility that it's hard to beat even when it's just one. With two, good luck.
Scary Dude did pretty well in that solo lane so far. Good rotations out of him too to really make an impact around that Gold Fury. And now you can see that he's starting to make a bit more of an impact in those team fights too, securing his own blue buff. As I look around now, you can see a couple of sledges starting to appear. One for Nika and one for Rafa is being built. Shillelagh is online so far. And that extra protection is going to be very, very useful as this game continues.
And there's a lot of damage on both sides, it feels like. I mean, you got Hevo jungle, that's going to be quite a bit. You've got this insane damage coming from Paul on the initiation, and then he's going to transform and then do a little bit less damage. So getting some protections online, especially if Neil doesn't go the route that Snoopy went yesterday, where he was going a flat pen item third. It was Divine both games there because they needed the passive. Not sure if that was exclusively because United had a Giannis in mid and didn't have a good Divine Ruin applier, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Neil go something like a Spear of the Magus or like a Desolation. You could go Divine in this game and feel good about it because of the Freya as well.
Nice damage onto Vo, who has to beat, turns around the damage though because he's got support from Cherio. Zapman leaps away to the right hand side, but there was Rapid to secure if needed. Vo gets credit for the kills. Neilmar now has to fall back. Good rotation out there from Cherio to support his duo lane as Nika tries to keep the other side of the map held down a little bit and keep Cuvo Fred busy here. Doesn't really surprise me though, Ryan, with how this game's began, because PK, I feel, have a little bit of a better early game where Space Station are trying to get through the early game towards the team fights with this Freya, with this AMC.
Yeah, but AMC pretty good pressure early game as well. You've got Ratatosker there more so for early pressure than anything else. I think both teams have good tools in the late game. I don't think that PK is a whole lot better early on. I would actually say they're worse for the most part, but they've just played the weakness of Space Station Gaming really well so far, which is that left side of the map. But that's why that rotation by Cherio and by Raffer is so important on that right side of the map, because it forces PK to change their strategy and know that they can't just go that aggressively on the vote without any sort of repercussions.
Blink for blink exchange there between Rafa and Cuvo Fred, as the blue buff was stolen by Cuvo Fred there again, just continuing to poke at Nika and this solo lane to keep the pressure rolling for Scary D and keep him relevant. Breastplate of Valor already online, working next up for a little bit more magical defense and power too. So far so good for PK though, as the Gold Fury is due to spawn in the next 50 seconds. Will be that primal as well, as Nika, who's continued to regress into this jungle, may be in a bit of problems here. Nice little ultimate though, will keep him alive for now, but look at what Paul did. He transformed into Rafa, and look down, he'll be off the mark, but he'll cut off the angle and still pick up the kill.
And Nika just a little bit overextended again. Now Raffer finds himself in an awkward position, plucked back. Paul might be able to catch up with some help from a slow from Cuvo, and no chance for Raffer to get up into the trees of Yggdrasil. Another kill for PK, and that leads them conveniently straight to the Pyromancer.
Yeah, wild situation though. Look at the kill differential, 7-1, but look at the gold. Space Station Gaming are winning in terms of gold right now. Experience, relatively even. But there's a slight gold lead there for Space Station Gaming, which is a little bit surprising to me considering the state of the game. And they lost a Gold Fury earlier.
It's really only the Gold Fury that should have really propelled PK, because all these kills have happened for Pittsburgh Knights, sure. What objectives have they gotten off it besides that Gold Fury? For every buff invade that they get, Nika gets one on the right-hand side. It's been pretty even, and that's why Nika has been really important in this game, even though he's 0-2. That speed buff invade that he did, putting constant pressure on back harpies on blue buff, it's pulling Fred over to the right side of the map and making sure that these dives on left are a little bit lower percentage for the Pittsburgh Knights. It's what opened up that rotation from SSG to be so successful, because Cuvo couldn't be there. If he's there, then I think it favors PK.
Well, Primal Fury started up by Space Station. Cherio already used the knock-up to try and slow them down, but now members of PK have arrived too. And I think you're right, the Tomaku is 6-1, and that gold does go unchecked some of the times of how much of an impact that can really make. I would be interested to see how the Chalices are doing though. Is Space Station just farming those a bit more effectively? They're using that gold a little bit more. Whim comes out from Vote for a second as he gets trapped in a Maya. Actually beads the Maya there, did Vote. I'm not sure if the Ricochet are also connected, but that slow from the Suns will cause a problem for Vote now, who has his ultimate and has to use it to get away from Neil. Scary D lurking, waiting for Vote to land, and boom goes the Dynamite or not, is the question. He held it all the way through the Aegis. Cost Scary D his life, but he did trade out for the Freya.
Still a lot of ultimates expended by the Pittsburgh Knights. Paul, the only one with one left standing, but you can say the same for SSG, though. Look at that damage. No ultimate necessary with that much damage on the battlefield. Cuvo grabs another. And now, with the man advantage, I feel like PK might have a chance at Gold Fury, but with how low the health bars are, with Paul being the only one that has the ultimate, and the Primal Fury being a scary Gold Fury to pull, now with that ability, decides PK has to back off.
Yeah, I think with Cherio just being around having his ultimate available was just enough to be like, well, it's a little bit risky with only really Paul having his available. But speaking of Paul again, you were asking about can he play this assassin style on the Morrigan. He did it just there against Rafa and caught Rafa in an awkward spot. So we'll just see if he can continue this on, because I'm a little bit worried about Paul in the long run. If he really does take a liking to play Morrigan more mainstream, it could be a big issue for some of the players in the league.
I mean, he's already gotten so many gods permabanned against him at this point. You feel like if he adds another one to the pool, it's going to be impossible.
Fury started up this time by PK after the back to base. SSG are arriving, Rafa first on the scene. Won't be able to get there in time though as PK secure it and fall back immediately. That was a primal, and that will help them out a little bit with securing some of these jungle buffs. Cherry on the jungle catches Scary D, but Scary D is a very tanky target at this point in time, so the damage wasn't really there to secure anything. Nika catches Kivo in mid, blinking from Rafa, forces the beads. Kivo going to use the Divine Judgment for the protections. Stun does connect from Nika though, and Cherio secures the pickup. Space Station Gaming trying to answer back here and there where possible. Left hand side, we get to see Hecate in action for a second until Zapman leaps away to safety.
It's also that hastened ring as well. That makes a big difference on Freya's boxing potential. That when she gets that extra burst of movement speed and the true haste effect for a little bit, it becomes even more impossible to box her when it feels like it was already pretty much impossible to begin with. So good decision by Zap to just give up that purple buff. That's at this point, it's Freya's lane to control, especially with the 1.5 level lead that Vote has all of a sudden, because Zap has been around the map a little bit more. He's been pulling Gold Furies with the squad. Those are waves that he has to miss in order to do that. There's an opportunity cost for everywhere you go. And again, 9-3, Pittsburgh Knights still down about 2k gold.
Interesting to see so many Thorns picked up this game as well, actually, funny enough. Just because we've not really seen Thorns as of late. It did get a couple of nerfs as well, Ryan, in terms of how effective it would be. Why do we see so much? Are the carries that much of a threat these days?
They are. I mean, double auto attacker for SSG, kind of 2.5 with Nika there as well, building into that Berserkers and the Shoguns. You just want to de-incentivize them hitting you. Now, you can't Thorns in Cthulhu ult anymore. That was a really strong strategy. Can't do that, but you still want to be on top of them. You still want to be able to dash in, pop the Thorns beforehand, and then go up into the ultimate. That'll usually get the job done.
Oh no, Zap is just being melted. Cherio kind of showed up and went, can I just get an assist? You don't need my help, but I just want to make sure my tagline looks a little bit better by the end of this game. And now, they might be able to get this tier 1 tower as well. Neil's on the way. This isn't the best clear against a tower, I would say, with a Freya. Maybe one of the reasons we saw Soul band away, but it looks like PK are trying to do the Pyro. However, 3 members of Space Station here to slow them down.
That'll be a reset. No team wants to try and just outright confirm it over the other. And that's what I'm saying when I say that the early kill, the first blood, isn't enough. You've got to go back for more. And Vote every time, as if PK has been over here, has been the focus, but it's been to varying degrees of success. You trade out Scary for Vote before the Gold Fury fight a while ago. That turns out okay, I think, for Pittsburgh Knights. The time before that, it was the big rotation from Cherio and Raffer. It's really only been 2 extra ganks on that side of the map in the first 19 minutes, and that just doesn't feel like it's enough.
But we just saw across the map, the tier 1 fell to minions on the right-hand side, and the left-hand side, after Zapman dying, ended up going the way as well. And following that, the mid lane too, so now the map gets a bit trickier for PK to defend now. No outer towers to really fall back to. Their defensive options are a little bit more limited here at trying to rush through the jungle.
Feels like at this pace, though, I mean, SSG has just been able to really control the map a little bit better. I mean, even with all of these skirmishes happening for Pittsburgh Knights, SSG has been where they want to be and without really getting punished for it. And you look at how their team composition scales into the late game, it feels like it's really on the back of how much work Vote can do on this Freya and how much he can stay alive. And the counter to that, in my mind, is going to be what Paul is able to do on this Morrigan? Can he get up into Vote's grill really early in these fights? Can he sneak into that back line, get those stuns, and transform into the Cthulhu ultimate? And that'll buy him enough time to kill Vote even through the Valkyrie's discretion. Is that going to be the easiest way for PK to do it? Is it going to be Cuvo looking to blink alt Vote when that's not exactly going to be the easiest kill follow-up because of Valkyrie's discretion? That's, I think, the tension point that PK has to be worried about here. Who's getting into the back line and who's going to be able to actually deal with the Vote, because he has so much lifesteal now and so much attack speed. It's a tough task. It really is.
So not a whole lot of wards on that right-hand side of the map, I would say. A couple of sentries down from PK around that Pyro, and actually towards that middle exit there. Pyro was looked at for a second or two, but with the Fury now spawning in 20 seconds on the left-hand side, this is an Oni Fury as well, which may just open the map up a little bit more here. We'll see exactly where they choose to go. Just keep an eye on Cuvo Fred more than anyone here. Love his build path, 4, 1 and 4 so far on this Nemesis. Honestly, with how Nemesis has been played so far already this weekend, this is the 3rd set of the SPL in Phase 2. I think we might start to see a couple more Nemesis bans coming through.
You seem strong, man. The itemization options you have are fantastic. Look at this. Spacestation just burst down the Oni Fury. AMC Freya, by the way, doesn't take them very long.
Yeah, no time at all. And Neil did transform, trying to cause some problems for them, but not enough. Spacestation just walked away that time round. So the gold lead extends a little bit further for Spacestation, gaming once more. And really, you can just see they're just clearing out their own jungle. The Oni minions are now on the way. And do you expect them to try and pressure around the Pyro now once these minions arrive, maybe? Just trying to use this advantage for the tier 2 towers?
I imagine so, but I think this is where Oni is the least valuable in situations like this, where you don't really feel like you've got enough of an advantage to group up and force something like a Fire Giant. PK would likely just give up Pyro anyways. At this point in the game, it's really not worth that much to them to throw away a tier 2 tower too. So really Gold or Primal would have been outright better for Space Station in that situation, but you're taking whatever neutral golden experience you can at any point. It's not like it's not worth doing the Oni Fury right there, but probably a bit disappointing for them that that's the Fury that they got.
Dada is now in the mid lane, been quite quiet so far in this AMC, but he is level 19, just hitting 20 now to match that of Paul in that mid lane. So it does show you the mid laners are getting a bit more experience at the moment, with the support sticking towards the duo a little bit more so. Pyromancer now pulled by Space Station Gaming. Cherio going to be on frontline duty, trying to push back some of the members of PK. But you do see that Stone of Gaia now online for Scary D as well. One of the biggest setups I feel Space Station are using is that Water Spout out from Cherio there. But that knockup will allow some healing from the Gaia that did get a bit of love over the mid-season as well.
Plenty of HP. A little surprised we don't see Raffer pick it up here, honestly, with the way that his build has gone. I mean, Sledge into Thebes, that's a lot of HP that he's trying to really leverage with that Acorn that he's bought that gives him, again, 10% of his max HP as a bonus. You love that whenever you get big health items. So maybe Gaia's in the cards. You got to knock up a couple of knockups, honestly, on the other side for PK. Sobek can do it with his 1 or his 2. Cthulhu with the 3. Ho Yi with the jump in. I mean, you've got a lot of potential procs on the other side that you could really get some good value out of.
Cuvo Fred at level 18 here. Looks like he may be going towards the Heartseeker next. We'll see where that ends up. Looking at Paul's build, however, funny enough, not a whole lot of penning that so far, Ryan, for my liking. Is that something different from Morrigan, maybe, just because of the transformations and the way she plays?
Exactly. She doesn't really want to be hitting frontliners anyways, so you build for who you're going to hit in the game.
Gotcha.
Is really the big thing. And you're going to be, ideally, hitting backliners. And it's not like a god like Scylla, where, sure, I would rather be hitting backliners, but how feasible really is that? It's very, very possible with the Morrigan to actually hit backliners more than frontliners. So this is the pretty standard build path for Paul. Probably wanted to go Magus instead of Divine, but just didn't get an opportunity because of how much healing Space Station's itemized.
Oh my god, look at the shred of that Fire Giant! Where is PK? They're not going to be anywhere near in time. Rafa went up early as well, just to make sure no one could dive in at the tail end. Beautifully well-timed Fire Giant there from Space Station. 2 members of PK were arguably coming back from base. I think it was Paul and Zap who were actually the ones on the way back, which made it a nice, easy pickup from Space Station, who were just slowly but surely just choosing their moments to aggress.
That was 7 seconds, by the way, that it took SSG to do that. No frenzy for them either. Raffer shelled in case of something, I guess. I don't know. No frenzy, just a Shogun's Kasari and some hard work from the auto attackers. Cheerio not really lacking in help either in that department, but goes to show how important that prot tread is from the Ratatosker and how much damage these auto attackers can do. PK, I mean, in 7 seconds, Paul can't close that gap. Scary can barely close that gap with a Blink Sobek pluck, and that's really all you could hope for. And it feels like PK just kind of lost all their momentum from the early game, doesn't it? I mean, they get that first blood, it's going well, Cuvo's moving around the map, I like his aggressiveness, and then that play on the left-hand side that doesn't go well for the Pittsburgh Knights really was the last time I feel like they were actually aggressive at any time. They got a Gold Fury after that, but it really wasn't a big engagement. Ever since, it's been Space Station just being the ones to be the tempo setters. And Pittsburgh Knights haven't found a window where they feel comfortable actually trying to defend.
Well, outside of one Gold Fury fight, I've not seen a straight-up team fight yet between the two. Rafa is kind of hovering in the jungle here. Red buff is coming up, and Ratatosker is someone that can definitely rotate around the map and try and stop Paul more than anybody else from getting involved in action as this one continues and just trying to keep check. Nika happy to tank it up, allow his carries to get in, and this is where AMC's damage will really help them out here. Scary on the front line, lost half his health already, even with that Nemean line on line that will protect him from some of those basic attacks. It's not enough to keep him standing for now, so tier 2 falls. The Space Station start to transfer their momentum towards the middle lane.
This is an example of a game that I don't think Nemean is the new Nemean is actually very good. 2 block stacks doesn't save your life, I don't think, up against this many autos that are coming out this fast. I'd like it more for SSG, actually, wherever Cuvo goes in auto attacks or to block that poly.
Talking about going in, there goes Neil, and say goodnight to Neil, who was there for a second, and, well, he's already dead. Next on the list is Zatman, as Nika picks him up too. Cubo Fred trying to whittle down the health bar, but Nika's too tanky. Paul dived in on the Morrigan too. That could be Oshiro already. Fire Giant's still available for another 2 minutes, and with 2 towers down, they could just end here. Looks like we're going to see Nika go back to base and teleport back. He's got that available as they look for the Phoenix in mid lane.
I think they've got the damage too. Dardes surviving there because Paul was a little bit short on the stun, tried to transform, and in that millisecond of a self-root, Cherry flattened him with the crushing wave.
No ultimate available for Skirity or Cuvo Fred. No health bars left for him either. They've got to fall back towards the fountain, and the Titan's going to fall down very, very quickly here. Space Station Gaming take game 1. But honestly, Ryan, that was a strange game for my liking. It kind of shows you that kills don't mean everything. You know, play the map well, play as a team, you can get the result.
Exactly. Pittsburgh Knights had the early advantage, but never got a chance to really set their pace in the game once the laning phase really ended. And even really before that, it felt like even with all these kills, Pittsburgh Knights weren't able to create an actual advantage. And I think that they need to go back into the drafting phase and find a way to pick a composition that they feel comfortable team fighting with. I don't know that it's the case, but to me, Paul on a completely different pick than what we normally see him on might be messing with their pacing, might be messing with what they know they can excel with in these team fights, and as a result makes them a little bit more hesitant to actually go in, and that results in games like that.
Well, PK experimenting a little bit there, as are Space Station Gaming, but Space Station take that game 1. We'll get it back down to the desk, though, to break it down once more.
It might look like Hindu Man is in a rave right now, but don't worry, he's not the only one having some fun. If you want to have some fun too, then let me let you know the SMITE Fan Forge is out there for you now. SMITE fans have submitted their own designs to this contest, and now those winners are there for you to go in and pick up their merch. That's t-shirts, hoodies, mouse pads, pillows, all that stuff featuring your favorite SMITE gods and really sick designs designed by our own community members. So make sure you go check that out at forfansbyfans.com/fandom/SMITE. Go check that out. Meanwhile, we can talk a little bit here, Myth, about this game that we just saw, because apparently who needs the kill lead? Not Space Station. Apparently all you need is Freya on your side, and eventually you'll find a way to get that done.
Look, PK had kills. They had objectives, they had map pressure, but it didn't matter because they didn't have a magical hunter. It didn't look like a very high damage game from the Freya, but that doesn't matter. The second we saw him hit level 13, level 14, first off, he ran down Zatman and just absolutely decimated him on the spot. It wasn't hard. It didn't look like it was hard, at least. And from there was at no point that PK would engage a fight and could feel confident sitting in the damage. Cthulhu would dash in, use the ultimate, 3 Freya autos. Anyone would try and dive Freya, 3 Freya autos. It didn't really matter, and we saw that was the entirety of the time. PK just couldn't move up because they had that constant threat of damage from Space Station's draft.
And look at these clips. Cuvo Fred had an excellent early game start to this game. First blood onto the Freya. What about later on? Locks down Dardes for another kill. I think that Cuvo Fred, who ended the game, I think, pretty close to 4-1-4 on this Nemesis, maybe one more kill or death came through for him after that. But he was dominating the early game. It just did not matter. It was 5-0 at 11 minutes in favor of the Knights. But eventually, Freya came online. Zatman could no longer step up to them. Look about those objectives. It became a certain point where the Knights wouldn't even walk in Mifflin because they just couldn't fight him.
I mean, can you blame him? Did you see what just happened to Zatman? Because that's not something that exclusively happens to a squishy hunter. I don't care if your tank Cthulhu's walking at you. That's gonna happen.
Or you have two, because you have Morgan.
Yeah,
they'll die
you got two Cthulhu's? It worked one time, then Freya got Ring of Hecate. I mean, you gotta put some respect on these picks right now. I know a lot of these pros think they might be a little bit overvalued. You think of Freya as maybe this ranked god, but in reality, she's just that strong.
And look at some of these slash lines here, right? 3-1-3 for Scary, 4-1-4 for Cubo Fred, 1-1-4 for Paul. None of those feel like losing KDAs to me, but you saw a certain shift in the game. It was all Knights in terms of their objective-oriented focus at the beginning, but the more we got towards the mid-game, it felt like the Knights couldn't come in to contest. Remember the Fire Giant myth? I mean, the Knights were all there, they were all healthy, but they couldn't find a way into that fight. You heard Aggro say maybe it had something to do with Paul being on a god that he was uncomfortable with, and I think that might be part of it, but I think also they just realized there was no safe way to engage a fight.
There really wasn't. I mean, I can keep harping on about how strong Freya is, but I'll try and avoid it for a little bit, because I imagine we're going to see PK ban it out. No way we see him get the Freya again for SSG, but they still have to worry about Ola Run, Soul, Kronos. There's a lot of magical hunters that were still available in that last draft phase, and PK just decided to overlook them, instead favoring these more traditional hunters. I think that SSG really did learn the meta a little bit more quickly, or maybe they're setting the meta like we said they would. Either way, there's going to be a huge shift in P's and B's.
We did also see, though, Cuba Fred go away from that sort of crit-based Nemesis build that we'd seen earlier. This was the very pin-heavy build, like Jotun's Brawlers, and then a Heartseeker to finish it out. I'm wondering if we'll see an adjustment if Nemesis does come through again in this picks and bans for game number 2. I don't necessarily think that that's what hindered them by any way, but there are some different mindsets and approaches to the way that you pilot the Nemesis pick based on the comp that you're against. Do you think that this was one where crit might have served them a little bit better, or was that not really a big issue?
I think you need the ability to burst down the enemy carry, right? The enemy carry being Freya. You're not going to out-sustain damage of Freya. There's no way that you're going to use this Pen Tank Buster build and beat Freya in a 1v1. You need to land 2 auto attacks before Freya turns around to look at you and hope that both are crits and hope that they're just enough to put her down. I think that's the way I would have preferred to see it go. But that Tank Buster build was doing a lot of work towards the soul lane, towards the mid lane, anywhere else. It's just the second that Freya got involved, you realize, oh, my build really doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, there was a point where Cuba Fred was, I think, down 2 levels to Nika when he just had the Ninja Tabai Sledge, and Cuba Fred just basically walked him down, chunked him in the jungle, and there really wasn't anything Nika could do. So certainly the Knights had a stranglehold on this one, I'd say, until really the team fighting stage. So maybe we'll see some adjustments here in these picks and bans. SSG will be in the first pick spot this time. I believe it was Knights that were first picked last game. So maybe that can be an adjustment. I know you said already you think second pick might be favored. This could be a chance to see.
It should be favored as long as PK bans Freya here, because I think SSG would definitely take it off first. Now, Cthulhu being left available, it's a very strong flex pick. We saw the strength of Cthulhu there. Sure, it was mitigated a bit just by the raw power that is Freya, but instead this Aphrodite hover, I mean, that's SSG's bread and butter. It's a lot of sustain. Yeah. Healing is a little bit weaker right now, just considering how much damage comes out from the majority of the favored carries in the game. But either way, if we see this Aphrodite go mid, she plays it safe, which you know Dardes will. It should be able to make its way to late and keep whoever you need alive. And if they take another magical hunter, which there's still plenty available, Kronos and Soul, you can keep that one alive, keep her pocketed, win a team fight that way.
Yeah, I imagine it will be Dardes that we'll see pilot the Aphrodite. I believe we've seen him do this a couple times before to good success. On the other side, though, no surprise that Cthulhu gets snapped up right away by PK. And I wonder if in a world where they're not dealing with such an oppressive magical ADC, if maybe the double Cthulhu strategy could get some value this time. We saw when Paul was piloting the Morrigan, he was very willing to turn into the Cthulhu and have 2 of them in a team fight. Might be worth revisiting that again.
I mean, it was dominant. The second that PK got a winning position, they had the double Cthulhu set up around an objective. Well, you're not walking through him. He's throwing out insane amounts of damage and also a knock-up every couple of seconds, and there's 2 of them. They're both healing each other. You get an infinite heal loop with 2 Cthulhus. I mean, I don't want to downplay the strength of that comp. It's just that it got outshined last time. I think Morgan could have been a very good strategy into Freya had they made it to the late game a lot safer. If Morgan gets the jump on Freya, that's a good matchup. Unfortunately, it was just SSG all the way post 20 minutes.
Yeah, maybe even another gank over there for Cuvo Fred to that Freya a little bit sooner. We were talking about it. That version was clean, but they didn't come back over there until I think the Freya was level 7 or 8 or so. We saw the Sobek was a part of that from Scary D2, and it just might have been a little bit too late. So now it's Hell for PK. It looks like they want to go Sustain for Sustain with the Aphrodite up against the Hell. The Aphrodite obviously a much better single target healer, whereas Hell able to provide that heal over time that can hit multiple players.
And Hell is going to hit her power spike a lot sooner as well. She can look for that damage in the early game. If PK is looking to continue the strategy of controlling objectives in the early, this is the draft that you want for it. Cthulhu's got fantastic lockdown and damage. Hell, pretty easy to kill pre-5, but she's also pretty easy to kill enemies because her damage output is wild. I like what PK's draft is going for here. SSG playing a much more subdued draft. They're looking to play it for the late again, but this time they don't have that just stat stick inside of Freya.
Yeah, Jingwei and Aphrodite also signal to me that you're kind of waiting for the team fight phase, right? Neither one of those gods are going to run you over in the early to mid game in most instances. Now looking around the second round of bans, I like this from SSG. They know they got to ban some hunters away. It's just the one carry picked up for PK. So they banned away the Heimdall and the Hachiman. Not worried, it seems, about the Kronos or the Soul potentially coming out in response. Meanwhile, Ao Kuang and Nemesis banned by PK. I think we should be maybe seeing a little bit more Ao Kuang. He's pretty strong right now.
I think Ao Kuang is a completely undervalued pick, but maybe not so undervalued because we are seeing the ban come through here.
Sure.
This god is going to be able to have a fantastic execute out of the jungle. His damage output is insane, and he can solo objectives pretty easily with the Ring of Hecate as well. He's one of the few assassins in the jungle that is able to use it. I know he's a mage. He's a magic god. I like the pickup from PK here. Kali on this draft means that, sure, you can heal through, but you're not going to out-heal all the damage I'm using with my chainsaw, and also Destruction is going to make me death immune for a little bit. SSG right now, their draft is lacking slightly on lockdown potential. You've got Jing Chen, which is a little bit harder to execute on. That washing machine is going to be a fantastic beads burner, though. Now, Achilles and Robin running out the draft, that's a lot of frontline.
It is, and it gives them a little bit of early presence they might have been otherwise lacking to try and help them get to that late game. But that's why I really like this Kali pick from PK. It gives them a little bit of late game insurance as well to try to go toe-to-toe with this Aphrodite and this Jingwei they're going to have to deal with in the late game. I now think, even with an Aphrodite on the board, this Kali is the most valuable late game pick that's been drafted.
It's certainly strong. I like the Neath pickup from PK as well. It's telling me that Zap is going to play a little bit more passive in the lane and look to help out the rest of the team with a global ultimate. He's got a lot stronger. The Neath buffs are very strong. The trade potential is there. The backflip is not nearly as easy to track for the enemies since it goes so much more quickly. The draft from PK tells me that they're looking to win the fight in the 3v3 in mid, and SSG are looking to win the fight at 25, 30 minutes once they're grouped up and using that 5-man roaming death ball.
And you and I have been talking about this back and forth with Cthulhu, whether it's stronger in support or solo. But it's really starting to look like, Myth, the vast majority of the SPL is on your side. With this Amaterasu, I'm thinking that's going solo. The Cthulhu's got to be support here. So it looks like they largely agree in getting that value from the Cthulhu a little bit earlier.
I like the Cthulhu in solo, or support rather, so much just because of how much he can lock down the lane. It offers you just unparalleled levels of control.
And you'll love to see it. Game number 2 here between SSG and Knights. Let's get it down to Hindu and Aggro to kick it off.
Thanks a lot, gents, on the desk. Yeah, here we are for game 2 already, and straight out the gates, you can already see a grouping up from PK. However, right, we've seen Cthulhu so far in support. He has won a big, fat 0 games so far. Sure, it's only the opening weekend, but the pros are still leaning on him in the support role over the solo. A lot of the fans at home have been big believers that Cthulhu fits the solo lane a little bit more so.
Well, clearly we need to buff him. That's the first thing. 0%
Why
win
you
rate.
say that? Why you say that? Why you say that, huh?
What do you mean? He hasn't won a game. He needs buffs.
Okay.
Okay,
Cool.
Glad we're on the same page there, that you agree with me. It was your idea. I know you texted it to me in between games, but I thought it was a good idea, so I'd say it. I think that Cthulhu in support makes a ton of sense because everyone always thinks about the moments where the enemy Cthulhu solo is super fed, they built some damage, they're going to be able to chase you down and 100-0 you in their ultimate. But in coordinated competitive play, that's just really not going to happen. the vast majority of the time. And I think situations like what we saw happen to Neil at the end of last game where he ults and instantly dies, that's tough. You know, that's a bad spot to be in. You can have that happen to you as a solo laner, and it's not going to feel particularly good. In support, you can always try and get some value out of it. You're not going to be doing as much damage, but you get more out of the utility aspects of the ultimate. You get more knockups from a distance. You get more healing for your team, and it's just a different focus. I think Cthulhu solo can work. I'm not saying it's bad by any means, but I think that he's never going to have solo kill potential. His gank setup is okay, but not fantastic. I think his kill pressure that he brings to the duo lane in the 2v2 was a little bit better than what he brings in solo.
Well, what you see on the screen right now, though, is an Achilles support with the Jing 10 in solo lane for Nika here. Does look like Spacestation are leaning a little bit more on Rafa playing more aggressive supports in this lane, this meta, and leaving Nika to be a bit more of the frontliner tank, so to speak. I wonder if that's going to be a continuation thing as the season goes on. But at the moment here, I'm wondering how this execute's going to play out with all these healers. Cherio, though, in mid lane, going to box out against Paul here. Good little route to keep the pressure going there, but Paul on his signature hell. Dart is on what we can consider his signature Aphrodite this game. Sustain is going to be important, so anti-heal will also come into play.
We'll see onks for both teams here. I don't think there's any doubt about it. There's so much healing for both sides. I mean, it's not just the main mid laners like you mentioned, but you want anti-heal against the Achilles. That could be annoying, but
a little bit too aggressive from Raf here, just trying to hang around and steal that camp, and on the rotation was Cuvo Fred, who for the second game in the row now gets first blood for PK. Let's see if he can get something going this game, though. The lead is there for them now. And I guess I should touch it a little bit on Neith. We've not seen her in a while. She got a lot of love over the mid-season, not only because of the itemization changes for ability-based hunters, but also because, you know, her Unravel's a bit more effective now, as is that backflip.
It's huge, man. This character got buffed in so many different ways that are all incredibly impactful. It's hard to say which one is actually the one that put her into competitive viability. It's probably just a combination of all of them, to be honest. The faster backflip means that it's not nearly as easy to just set up some damage underneath it. It's still very possible, and it'll still happen at this level, no doubt about it. But it's not 100% guaranteed like it was previously, where you felt like you felt like Zapman was riding some sort of rusty tricycle on the backflip. It took forever for him to get there, and you could walk faster. Then that backflip ended up happening. And the ability for Unravel to steal attack speed. It already decreased the enemy's attack speed, but now giving it over to yourself, giving yourself an actual stim. It's not as good as most Hunter stims because it won't work on objectives at all, but it only works if you hit an enemy god. But that's still a big deal when it comes to actually boxing. And Neith's trays can be very favorable already because of how much sustain Unravel gives you and the amount of damage that Spirit Arrow can bring. So I think that she now actually has a chance to be a real lane bully in the duo lane or in mid, and that gives her a more clear and coherent identity.
And definitely in a matchup against Jing Wei as well, if they get left alone, that World Weaver from Neith could come into play in the other lanes. I wouldn't be surprised if you see PK look to make plays around mid and solo lane and use that World Weaver on the rotations, because Jing Wei's not going to do a whole ton in this laning phase in my eyes up against the likes of the Neith. It's going to be pretty much a farm off outside of the supports getting involved there. Stacks coming through though slowly but surely on those Guardian's Blessings and those Mage's Blessings too, which Nika has in the solo lane on this Jing 10 here. I was definitely interested to see if we see any adaptations to the solo lane, and this is one of them. Maybe you see a couple more supports this year in the second phase.
It makes sense, man. I mean, without Glad Shield to withstand the poke damage from Guardians, they get a lot better because their base damages are just so high that they're going to be able to be very effective over here in this lane. So I would expect a lot of things like Yorm, Xing Chen, Sobek, of course, like we saw Scary play last game. Those all feel like very strong options to me in this lane right now. And maybe the Soul Leader Wukongs, like Benji was playing yesterday, might have a chance to try and compete up against them. But for now, I think I would expect to see a lot of Guardians over here. And I like the idea.
Neil going to catch two in the jungle on the rotation through overhead kick already uses. Kubo jumps in looking for the pick on Dardes. Cherry on the front line though will be the one that takes the brunt of the damage, and Paul chose to try and stay further back there, so wasn't really there for the follow-up. Spacestation will survive, but it did cost them both their ultimates. However, 3 were used on the side of PK as well, so it's not all doom and gloom.
Certainly not. It was a perfectly timed Undying Love there by Dardes. It immuned the damage and CC coming from Zapman's ultimate, and that's what I was going to bring up when you were talking about this World Weaver and how it was going to impact the map. I don't know who it really guarantees death to, because you look at Cherio, overhead kick, you don't have to worry about it as much, won't take the damage or the CC. Same for Dardez's ultimate. Nika's playing Xingchen, a very difficult god to kill. Rafford, sure, you can hit him with it, but he's got CC immunity built in. I just don't know that I like the idea of Neath plus Kali. You know, she doesn't want to gank that much anyways.
Well, that backflip and the bead straight after from Zap will get him back onto tower range safely enough, and that's the advantage there. Once upon a time, would have definitely been dead in that scenario for my liking, even without the ultimate. Neil, though, caught in the jungle here, will be able to dash away. Chase still on from Rasher, though, trying to get him within execute range, and that's a dangerous combo there. Afro, Achilles together. You've seen it in mid and solo. I think it'll still work out a similar sort of way in support.
And you got the Robin as well as a great link target. I think Spacestation have put together a really solid draft. Not super sure about the Xingchen solo versus the Achilles solo, but if they feel like it's been working in scrims and Nika prefers the Guardians over there, I think it can work just fine. I just really like the idea of having multi-link targets for an Aphrodite in mid, because Afro is going to be strong, but she needs to have a solid link target to really work, and I think that's usually the big crux of any Aphrodite composition. Whereas on the other side for PK, they're very late game focused with this early game Neath, and that's what I'm saying. I don't know that I like it alongside the Kali, because there's two schools of thought on how you want to use Neath ultimate. Do you want to pair it with a hyper late game jungler like Kali to supplement their weak ganks, to make their already weak ganks actually have a better chance of success? Or do you want to use it to really snowball a heavy ganking jungler to make sure that every time they show up to a lane, they're going to get a kill? Personally, I think the latter is a little bit better. I think she's better in compositions that want to snowball the map a little bit more because she brings so much global pressure. But PK is using her in a different fashion this game. And so I think that Zap getting consistent World Weavers off is going to be a big part of how PK can actually take a lead that they have now, a small one, but a lead, and be able to actually use it to win the game, unlike what happened to them in Game 1.
Most interesting thing I've seen so far, though, both supports have upgraded their shells very early on in this game. Not something I've really noticed yet, but I'm going to have to keep an eye on as time goes on here. Those upgraded shells, probably to play around the fact that Hunters and, you know, the mage ADCs are doing a lot more damage these days. But in this game specifically, it's a bit surprising to me.
I mean, the Kali on one side certainly makes sense. I think that getting the shells for what Cuvo is going to do checks out. I agree that it might feel a little bit early for Neil to have upgraded his shell, but sometimes that's just the start. You just want to upgrade it right away because you don't necessarily have anything else to spend your gold on. Sometimes you just have the extra 500 gold, and it feels really, really bad to watch your teammate die knowing that upgraded shell would have saved them when non-upgraded shell doesn't. And it's better to just have it too early than too late, and I can agree with that.
Well, Zap up against Vogue. Vogue going to reposition behind him and cut off Zap's angle. And Zap, meanwhile, just continues to take the trade, realizing he can't backflip. Now he's in no man's land. Gonna run for the tier 1 tower to die, I'd feel here. Try and clear the wave on the escape route. But Vogue will get a 1v1 there for my liking, even with Cherio. So should I say, Rafa and Cherio waiting in the wings. I don't think it would have made a blind bit of difference there. Zapman just caught out. And now Space Station going to find a bit more of a win on this left-hand side after poking out Neil to take away the purple too. Gold Fury could be on the cards here as well.
Zap look a little bit rusty there, huh? Into a couple autos that don't really find the target and vote a little bit more accurate.
Streamer Zap,
solo kill for him. Raffer's going to zone Fred effectively. Easy Gold Fury for Space Station Gaming. And you feel like Space Station just has a much better way to snowball this game, don't you? I mean, the Robin alongside the aggressive Achilles, Dardez's damage comes online pretty quickly just because it's really only there as supplemental damage for what Cherio is going to be doing in the jungle. I feel like as soon as Space Station starts to group up, they're going to be very, very difficult to stop. Whereas PK, even when they do start grouping up, they're going to need a little bit more time to really get the ball rolling with this competition.
This is a good answer back, though, from PK early on. Getting that Pyromancer before Spacestation could realizing it. Still with Rafa hanging on that left-hand side, trying to keep Zapman down. It opened up a bit more of a window there. Spacestation are just trying to answer back now in the jungle, as you can see, but nothing really available for them to take. So the goal differential between the two is actually PK in the lead at the moment with how this stands, even with Spacestation getting hold of that first goal, Fury. You can really see how close these teams can be, even on paper. It may look like the team's going one way, but keep an eye on the goal. It's so important.
It's only 1-1, but the gold being this close, I mean, XP seems pretty close as well, just a slight lead for Vote as you would expect, but maybe it's going to get a little bit bigger now that Cubo's caught out.
Good shell coming out there, though, from Cthulhu to try and help out, but Rafa had the execute primed and ready. Cherio could still fall down here to Neil Ma, as Neil just stays in the tower range, looking to swipe down Cherio's life, and does so. But now Neil's a bit too deep in, runs into Dodders, who gets a good combo off. The Maya going to come out, as now Neil just going to have to accept his death at some point. The problem is, does he want to give the kill to Dodders, or would he rather give it to Vote? Don't think he saw Vote coming until it was too late.
Well, Vote gets himself a double because he soloed Zap in lane as that fight was going on as well. So I'm sure Dardes not too pleased about Vote getting that second kill, but the Scottish Hunter probably laughing his way back to lane right now. 2 for 3, not bad, but again, your only early game, your worst scaling pick for Pittsburgh Knights is really struggling at 12 minutes into the game. 0-2 for Zap compared to the 3-0 for Vote, and that's not a good sign because I think Spacestation might just start leaning on this left side of the map. I know Neath is safer than she was because of the faster backflip, but I would by no means describe her as safe, even with the change. I think that she is still absolute food for Cherio whenever he comes over here.
I think PK fans, though, watching at home can be quite happy with the fact that there is still a Helen Collie in the middle area of this map, though. So, like, even if Neath does fall off as this game goes on and gets focused down by Spacestation, you've got 2 pretty damn good hyper carries in the late game if you can keep them farming away.
No doubt. I mean, it's not like this game is over if Zap gets taken out. I mean, it's like you said, a Collie hell. Either one of them is, oops, we won the game off of it, if things go right for them in the middle of a team fight. Even more so than most other characters in the game, especially Kali. So it's certainly not over for PK, despite the fact that their left side of the map has struggled a little bit. In fact, Cuvo has a slight XP advantage in the jungle right now over Cherio, but I still get this feeling that as soon as Spacestation starts grouping up, they just have a much easier to execute composition than what Pittsburgh Knights are going to have to do. PK feels very CC light to me. I mean, you have no CC whatsoever out of Paul. The melee range stun out of Cuvo. That's not going to do a whole lot for you. Zap's really going to need to find some solid roots, but that's not exactly the best CC in the world up against someone like a Robin or a Jingwei. That's pretty easy for them to get out of those roots. So Spacestation having the heavier CC composition as well as not needing as much ramp-up time is a scary recipe for the mid-game.
50 seconds on the next Fury spawn as the Oracles looked at Neilmar getting chipped down early on there from Rafa and Dardes in tow. We're just watching away. Zap does have his second relic now online and available for himself. Gone for the Aegis again. As now with Hell here, it's Rafa too far forward and he's going to use his ultimate defensively early. So I'm thinking about the World Weaver there for a second. Not so sure it's the right opportunity. But Spacestation are on the hunt by the looks of it here. Look at them. 4 members group. Ward coverage though from PK pretty solid to give full vision of this attempted invasion. And the invasion will at least pay off to strip away a purple buff. Nika and Scary D now rotating out of solo shows that both teams gearing up for this next Fury.
And I like this idea by Spacestation. They really want to leverage that strength of their composition that we've been highlighting. But I like a couple of the itemization choices here for PK. I mean, you look at this Brawler's Beat Stick for Zapman. I love to see that underneath when you see the Aphrodite on the other side. I think that's very smart.
Neil forced to swoop away using that Russian terror back to safety of his team here. He doesn't have much sustain in his kit, so may have to rely on Paul. And you can already see Paul already topped him back up above half again. Rafa on zone duty for a second as now Cherio walking around from mid to start this Oni Fury with Nika and Vo. Front line though, Rafa took a ton of damage and into the ult goes Neil. Anti-heal comes into play from that cursed on too. As Scaredy falls back, but Nika has already taken out Neil before he could fall back too. 3 members of PK fall back towards the red buff as Scary rotates towards the middle lane. Space Station create a bit of an opportunity here. Still have a couple of ultimates available if Cherio looks to get aggressive.
Nika, no ultimate. He has to be pretty careful, but that Spirit Arrow off the mark. Pittsburgh Knights stole away the Oni Fury, and Cubo is eating up the Space Station backline.
Yeah, he eats up one, and then Cherio drops the fist to nullify that for now. Scary still giving chase, though. Darnet's completely out of mana, even with the Mage's Blessing and the Chronos Pendant. Too much regeneration is required as Cherio now gets himself an answer back on Scary D. Vote low on health, but Paul low on mana and low on life. A double kill for Cherio as the Fury falls to PK. The battle, I couldn't tell you who really came out on top there.
It's close. I mean, a little bit more XP for Space Station Gaming, but a little bit more gold there for the Pittsburgh Knights. An absolute bloodbath on that Fury, and really, I think a smart engagement by SSG because Nika had picked up that cursed Ankh in his second relic slot, whereas Scary went for Frenzy, and so there was no Ankh available for Pittsburgh Knights in the middle of that fight. You feel like that should have been a very advantageous fight for SSG because of that, but they only kill Neil off the back of that cursed Ankh. That means Paul is going to be able to get a lot more regen on the back end of that fight than SSG would have liked him to. Cuvo's able to get more damage off because he gets that a smaller heal from that Destruction ultimate, but at least some sort of heal, unlike what would have happened if he would have been onked. And PK just play that fight really patiently, understanding that even though Neil died, there's still enough gas in the tank for them to be impactful in this moment. So a great play by them for them to get the Oni Fury as well. Didn't see what stole it, but I really liked the way they played that fight.
Yeah, agreed. Not sure really who secured that goal, Fury, but it was a big pickup for PK there with how the fight tape ended up. So still, kill lead is in favor of Space Station. Goal different story at the moment as Cherio uses the ult towards Paul, but Paul's still fine. Forces the World Weaver out as well from Zapman. It does connect, but Dardes had already used the heal to top him back up as well. Anti-heal will become more prevalent as this game goes on. You can see the Divine Ruin now online for Dardes in the mid lane as he starts to build into some more penetration. The rest of the map, meanwhile, you can even see Scary D going for that Toxic Blade this game.
Just anti-heal's the name of the game, man. There's so much on both sides. I think that we'll continue to see even more. No Divine quite yet for anyone on PK. Doesn't seem like Paul's going to get it anytime soon. Neo could be going the Snoopy route and doing it for the squad, but looks like PK might be relying on no Divine Ruin this game, which is going to be pretty difficult.
Well, with that, we've got a bit of an issue going on here at the moment. Can you still see the game, Ryan? I'm having technical difficulties. I don't know about you.
No, I got a little freeze as well, so that's why we're going to come out.
Perfect. No one told me, so I just sat here raving away as I am. They wanted to give me background lights, guys, so I decided to put background lights on, just so you know. The other casters, they all just went for one color. Why would you do that when you've got a whole selection? You know? Why would you?
Very typical Hindu man. All of us get lights, you know, get our background looking nice and clean, and Hindu man goes, "Oi, you're going to give me some lights? I'll show you some lights," and then turns on the disco. So
it's not my fault they gave me lights with those settings. I mean, I think you guys have the same lights, right? Like you can do this too.
We are all just a little bit more normal to the point where we don't necessarily need to put the disco setting on, even though it is available to us.
Just to be clear, we're not normal. We're Smite casters. That's what we're here to do. So try and entertain you all. Sorry about the technical difficulties. We'll be back and give it about a minute's time. But funny enough, Ryan, this specific set today, I expected a lot more hype out of this one. And really, it's almost methodical, kind of lackluster in my eyes of how these games have been played so far today. Are you surprised at this?
Not really. I think this is how Space Station likes their sets to go. I think that this is where they really excel in just playing the map very effectively and very quickly just draining games away from their opposition. I think that's kind of their optimal style. PK, on the other hand, I think that they can play that same sort of style, but usually tend to like to snowball early games a little bit more than they have today. But Space Station's really taken the punches from PK pretty well. I like the idea of putting Raffer on these aggressive gods to try and counteract that aggression that you would expect coming from the Pittsburgh Knights duo lane, especially when they pick things like Ho-Yi Cthulhu, Neath Cthulhu. Those are pretty high-pressure duo lanes, and Space Station Gaming has handled them pretty well so far.
I think it's always fun as well. The start of this season, because of the mid-season changes, so to speak, everyone's kind of up in the air about what is the meta. The pros don't really know the meta. They've had the game less than a week to really scrim and practice, but everyone comes in with their own style. We saw a couple of teams yesterday experiment, and Neil on his pre-game interview was talking about the same thing, and we're seeing it here in this set too. Everyone's trying to work out what's good and what's bad right now. The only thing that's really stood out for everyone, I think, is Hecate, which is already getting nerfed.
Yeah, and for good reason. The item's been pretty dominant so far. Surprised that we don't see any Hecate users in this game, but 3 out of the 4 primary ones have been banned. It was only Soul that was left open in this game, but she wasn't picked, so we know Dardes is willing to play her, even when she wasn't considered to be very good. He played her earlier on this year. I thought it might be an option for SSG, but they decided to go to the Jing Wei, and it certainly worked out for them. Vote's having a great game so far on that Hunter.
We've not really spoke about it yet, but Jingle did pick up that Atlantas bow. I'm going to get that right one day. I want to say Atlanta. That's why, not Atalantas. But we picked up that bow, and we've seen how effective that could be in teamfights if you get a kill or an assist. That zoom, go faster is very much like the old school Fatalis, so to speak.
It's really strong, man, and it's even better on a character like Jing Wei that already feels like she can catch up to any sort of engagement that's happening on the map. Now, if she gets the kill onto the support or the warrior that's in front of her that was trying to zone her away, she could airstrike in, use that extra movement speed to quickly get into the fray and that half-hastened effect to really snowball the fight out of control. And I like the build path that he's gone. Get the Atalantas early, then go into the Rage. Looks like it's going to be a Wind Demon next, if I had to guess. The Shadow Steel Shuriken, the new anti-healing crit item, boy, would you like that passive right here for Vote, but boy, would I hate to have to build the stats. That's the trade-off, man. The passive looks good here, but I don't think it's good enough to warrant that stat line.
Well, we'll see what Vote ends up doing with this build, and as it continues, you do see Zap has also got the Atalantas online too now. And one thing I will mention is that some of these hunters that can build into the Atlantas, like Xbalanque, like Neath, ones that can influence the map globally, they could actually find themselves with a huge amount of movement speed and attack speed if they get the killer assist across the map with their ultimates, which could impact their laning phase or their 1v1 fights almost.
That's a good point. You can use it, I think, a little bit better on a character like Xbalanque, where you don't have to put yourself still to fire off a World Weaver that'll then take a little bit to get there. But it is definitely a good point that you can get a pretty big boost out of nowhere in that early laning phase and kind of leverage that to try and get an early kill. But at this point, I think Zap is pretty far behind. I don't think even with an Atalanta's proc that he would end up winning the trade up against the 2-level superior Jing Wei.
Well, approaching 20 minutes in the game and nothing really separating these two teams at the moment. Level differentials a little bit here or there, favouring Spacestation Gaming, I would say, as you look down at the levels of the teams of the both. Meanwhile, Jungle for Cherio, just a 2-level lead over Cuvo Fred, and Cuvo obviously playing that Carly. You want to get into the late game, get that gold online as quick as possible, as Atalantas and the Chins also online there for Cuvo Fred on this Carly this game. Finally, though, one item I've been looking forward to talking about is Spear of the Magus, and Dones has picked it up.
And it's perfect on Aphrodite because you're really trying to set up your team to kill the one person that you stun, the one person that you hit with back off. The birds are going to be great too.
Great ultimate from Nika, but only when he catches Neil in a dangerous stop. Beads were burnt on Zapman, though, and Neil's already dead. Vote gets credit for the kill. Zap answers back onto Rapper as Cuvo Fred tries to chop Sui down onto Cherio, but it's not enough for a kill. Cuvo falls to Vote. He's on a double now, and now with Zap falling back to base, it's only really Paul left standing. So I'm going to see Scaredy look to base here, and that gives Spacestation Gaming a great opportunity to take down this Gold Fury. What ended up happening in that fight there? Was that just Nika's ult that just caught PK unaware?
Nika's ult was fantastic. It put both supports in an awkward position because Rafford was a little bit early on his execute and made sure that Neil got his ultimate off, which did favor PK momentarily, but Cuvo just got caught in the crossfire. I don't know exactly what hit him. I don't know if it was Vote with some auto attacks or what, but Cuvo immediately was at 0% HP, had to use that ultimate and try to chase Cherry over the wall, and that play just never works. Can I say, the Kali jump over the wall after someone who just jumped right as your ultimate is expiring, it never ever works, and Kali players get baited by it every single game.
But you gotta heal if you hit him, right?
Yeah, you heal if you hit him, but I don't think Cherry would have died anyways off of that. I mean, you would have needed 2 to 3 autos, Cubo would have been at 1 health because the anti-heal that's on him. Just not a great game so far for Cubo on this Kali.
Well, Spacestation feeling very confident after that little engagement in golf here. They go straight towards the Fire Giant here, and they catch Cubo Fred, who's forced to leap away and die to Dardes at the tail end there. The extra damage coming through to pick up the kill.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. We're cool with that.
Seems fair.
For sure. All of us are very cool with what just happened to Cubo Fred.
Nika, though, got a front line attached to Dardes. Remember, that's Zapman on an island, stuck in his own jungle, but Rafa hasn't really got much chase potential there. Spacestation forced to go back towards the Fire Giant, but Rafa wants to kill on Zap. He blinks in for this play here, now has to ult away. He is buying a bit of time for his team to start up the FG. FG still above 50% though. PK can get here in time, have ultimates available. Rafa's still dueling with a few, and everyone's wrapping around towards Rafa here for a second in time, but Rafa stands tall and stays alive. Neil uses his ultimate to try and dissuade Spacestation at the Fire Giant. Scary D finally takes down Rafa, but Paul is still dealing with 2 on the backside, and given as good as he gets, Nika doesn't like it, but now Paul has to cleanse himself, and still will be bursted down by Nika and the supporting factor of Dardes, who is very low on mana. Cubo Fred back in the fray. There's one. Can he find the second on towards Nika? No is the answer. He's going to leap away back to safety. Crazy engagements across the map, and nobody really comes out ahead in any stretch of the imagination.
I mean, Space Station keep their healer alive. They get the 3 for 2. Fred going to escape. No chance for Nika to catch him now. So a slight win for SSG, but certainly could have been better. That was the most Raffer team play of all time, though, wasn't it? I mean, Raffer goes in too deep, misses the 3, so puts himself in a very bad spot right away. And all the while, his team is doing Fire Giant, and then they come and help him and they win the team fight anyways. That is the perfect encapsulation of what Raffer teams have done all his whole playing career and why they've been really successful. Raff baits them all and then brings them straight to his team who are able to make great plays on top of it. Vote again with tons of player damage that fight. Dardes continues to just make Aphrodite look super unfair every time he gets this character, and the Magus only helps make that feel even worse because, again, Afro only wants to really be hitting 1 or 2 people at a time. She's not an AoE mage, so only having 1 person get hit by that Magus proc is not a negative for her whatsoever. It just means that that person's definitely dying to the bird's damage after back off. It's very strong.
Well, 2 team fights in a row, and Vote jumped 6,000 damage, I would say, of those 2 team fights here. Tier 1 falls on the right-hand side now as Space Station start to whittle down some here or there. Looks like they've opened up an opportunity for the mid lane as well now. All grouped up and with a sustained healer. PK are coming here in force, but they're going to be here very, very late to try and stop the amount of damage that shreds down that tower.
It doesn't take long with where Vote is in his build. 5 items deep, getting pretty close to 6, I'm sure, once he sells that Hunter's Blessing. But credit to Zap, he's kept up in itemization up until this point. He's got a good amount of itemization. He's going to be down a full item once Vote backs, basically, because Vote will be able to buy basically whatever he wants with that 2,700 gold that he effectively has with selling the Hunter's Blessing. But Zap hasn't fallen, an item and a half behind like I think a lot of Hunters would have in this slot.
Yeah, where do you expect Vote to go then with this final item once he sells that Hunter's Blessing here? Is it going to be maybe Titan's Bane more than likely? I mean,
could be
it has
Fail
some
Knot.
changes.
Fail Knot is something that I would look
that.
to. Yeah, it's going to be Fail Knot. This is just the easiest way to guarantee that you're getting as much or as close to that 40% cap as you can. You get 10% from Fail Knot, 20% from Atalantas, and then once you crit someone, you get 10% from the Wind Demon. It won't be on that first auto, but you basically have a 100% crit chance with your first auto with Explosive Bolts active and this much crit chance. And then once you have that first crit, you've got the pen for the rest of the team fight, basically. So this is the pretty standard crit build that I'd expect to see most crit hunters going these days.
Outside of the laning phase, I do feel like PK have kind of been a bit lackluster on engagements, or at least trying to start a fight. I say that now as Scary D leads the troops down mid lane. But it does feel like PK kind of been reactive here more than, going for a fight early on. And I think they're really struggling because of it. It just looks like they're apprehensive for some reason.
Agreed. I think that was their main problem in game number 1, and it seems like that problem has carried over now in game number 2. And, the communications dynamic for this team, I'm sure, is one that is is pretty well established at this point, like how their communication structure is. This team has been together for a long time. You've got Neil, who's, I'm sure, doing the vast majority of the communicating. But I think having a guy like Zap be taken out of this game pretty early with the early kills that Vote got, I think losing some confidence in Zap, or Zap losing some confidence in his shot calling potential because of where he was in the game, has probably hurt PK this time around. I think Fred on a more passive assassin means that he can't make as many aggressive calls as he could on something like the Nem in game number 1. And I think that is all kind of combined with how Space Station has really played this game, which is this very, very frontline heavy, going in with their CC and getting good poke damage onto the front line of PK. It makes it a lot harder to call.
That Fire Giant's getting low. Scary D dashes in, uses his ult early on, just trying to dissuade him. Aggressive look at Cubo Fred in the back line though, looking towards Cheerio, but Cubo Fred's health bar has already been removed. Darnaz's Doves will get the kill again, and now it's go, go, go from Space Station again. Nika leading the charge with Vote just whacking into the back of Cthulhu's head, and we'll get credit for the kill. Cubo and Neil both dead. 2 frontliners really unavailable. Scary D doesn't have his ultimate up this time round, but he does have the sustain of Paul here, and it doesn't look like Space Station want to go in. Instead, they look for Paul on the backside. Paul forced to use the Aegis. The Doves come through and cause a couple more problems. Meanwhile, Vote is in the Fire Giant pit. Is he doing that on his own? It looks like he is. Vote might just be soloing the Fire Giant down. That ain't Panitom. No, that's still going to be a secured Fire Giant. The power of these hunters and these carries on the Fire Giant. It looks like FG needs a buff at this point. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it might be the case. Feels like we thought it was a magical hunter thing yesterday with the Chronos, but apparently not. It's just FG took a little bit of time off. You know, that I get it. It's quarantine season. You're not lifting weights like you used to, but
Yeah,
FG's kind of letting himself go a little bit.
That's a good point,
exactly.
man. I mean, you know, he had mid-season, he was kind of chilling. You know, all these noobs came back to play again with the Avatar announcement, so he's like, I can farm these idiots. And then the Pro League kicks off, and he's like, wait a second, I'm useless.
Not as strong as he used to be, that's for sure. And Space Station take advantage pretty nicely. It just feels like, for me, the promise of this composition of PK is if we can get to late, you know, if we can get to 35 minutes, Fred's going to be able to carry the game for us, and Paul's going to be able to carry the game for us, and neither one has really been able to deliver on that quite yet. Zappa is still never going to be able to output as much as Vote will at this point in the game. It's just not possible. You just your character is not conducive to really hard carrying at this point in the game. That ship has sailed, so you're really looking for Fred to be the main carry from here. And Fred has really found it's been tough for him to find these good aggressive plays come late game because of all this protection that Darnaz has from his own kit, from how fantastic this front line has been from Space Station, and how much damage Vote is putting out consistently. I mean, Fred hit the 4 button when he was at 80% health in that last fight, and it's a tough tightrope to walk because you can never die with Kali ult up in the late game. That's an easy way to lose games, and you'll get criticized for that, deservedly so. But when you use it that early, that means that you don't really get that much value out of it. And he's not finding these reset kills at all, so he's not getting the healing. Even if he could, because of the upgraded Ankh and the Divine from Darnaz and the Brawlers from both Raffer and Cherry, you're just never getting full resets off against the Kali, man. I just feel like Kali's overvalued, to be honest. I just haven't been impressed with it all year.
Well, it's going to be tricky for PK to defend Phoenixes. They've not got the greatest of wave clear to get him away. Fire Giant online for Space Station 2. Ascarity flipped into the sky and executed down by Rafa. Cheerio, though, went to the back for Cubo Fred. Loses his life to Paul because of it. And now the Phoenix is about to fall down, but the carries have been kept away from it. Rafa's trying to whack away. And it presents enough room with Nika going in deep. Good shell at the tail end. Cubo jumps in, takes out Vote. Looks for another one towards Darnaz there, but Darnaz still alive again. His jukes are too much until Paul gets the Inspire and the damage off too to follow up. Paul going in deep, trying to keep Neil going. Zap back in action, looking for the root and finds it on Nika. There's a kill for Zap with the backflip away. Rafa has to blink to the right-hand side, and it's only Rafa standing here. That didn't work out too bad for PK, honestly. They lose a Phoenix, but they win the fight. If they can get some towers up this, it could pay off.
And it's the first time that Cherry was really isolated. Really, anyone from Space Station has been isolated all game long, because for the most part, they've deathballed very, very effectively in this game. That was the first time that SSG got a little bit split up, and PK was able to punish them much better this time around. I liked that play from PK, and that's where the composition looks like it's going to work. It's, okay, Cuvo is able to go in, get some kills, and they focus everything on Cuvo, and now this late game hell is able to surge forward and be the difference maker. That's how this composition is supposed to work for the Pittsburgh Knights. It's just the first time that it actually has.
Well, you're looking at a 10k gold lead so far for Space Station, but this bit of a window here with a staggered death timer on Rafa. PK might be able to take down some of these towers or just strip the map around where they can. Already taken down the Oni Fury so far, but I'm not sure if they can really get towards any of these towers to make that deficit a little bit different here. It definitely felt like Space Station still come ahead with a lead though, because it is a Phoenix. You were talking about Carly there, and maybe she's a little bit overvalued. You saw me get excited thinking, here we go, this is Carly's window, right? Bursted down again before she could really make an impact after one kill.
Well, she had to use the ultimate in the 1v1 up against Cherry, and still Fred needed help in order to win that one. I just think teams are so much better now at playing around Kali that she isn't that insane carry she used to be.
Oh. Beads and ultimate used there by Dardes and Vote. Dardes not being pressured here, but he might be now that knockup connects. He's going to rotate back into the fight though, feeling quite confident. That sets Scary up for a great ultimate into the Maya damage too. That's going to cause problems for Dardes again. Vote, meanwhile, already picks up Scary, and now he's looking for Neil Mar too. The other members of PK very deep on the backline, just trying to survive, and that leaves Neil on his own. He needs some help and gets a very good cleanse to avoid the Jing 10 ultimate, but not the knockup after the fact. Chipped away at and executed down by Rapper. Just as the fire giant spawns, they may not even need it. The Titan is under threat as three members jump to the backline. Paul's dead, Cubo limps away, Zap's next on the table, and Space Station Gaming are looking to close this out in under 40 minutes.
Yeah, an impressive game here from SSG. I think that they just play this Aphrodite composition better than any other team in the league right now. It's so hard to stop. If you're willing to first pick that Aphrodite and then give them all the counter picks in the world, and it still's not going to work out for that team, that is very, very scary. And that's really something that you have to keep in mind all the time against Space Station. You have to come in with a game plan on what are we going to do if they first pick Afro, because if you don't come in with a plan, I just don't see how you win. And clearly, the let's just outscale the Aphrodite, let's have two characters that are as good as her late, isn't going to work either, at least with the way that PK executed on that today.
I think the hardest thing for these pro teams, honestly, with only really a week's worth of prep with the new patch, is what's good and what's bad in picks and bans, because there's so many gods that come to your mind. You've got Persephone, you've got these major AD carries too, but that means you're letting the healers through. Things are going to get tighter, Ryan, as time goes on.
I agree. I think that we're going to see different types of junglers prioritized. Like I said, I think Kali's a little bit overvalued right now. I think Baka's a little bit better than her. If you really want an auto attacker in the jungle, I think that you can go the Baka route or the Nemesis route and go with that Golden Blade like we saw from Fred in game number 1. I think the teams are going to get there for sure. It's certainly not the end of the world here for Pittsburgh Knights. They looked a little bit rusty outside of just the picks and bans as well in terms of actual in-game mechanics and execution. Week 1 of Phase 2, man, it's going to take some time even for the vets.
I completely agree. And take into account all these teams play each other 3 times this phase, probably one of the longest phases we've ever had in the Pro League. Let's get back to the Deso to break down what they saw and what they thought both teams could improve on.
Thanks, Hindu and Aggro. What a game for SSG. I think showing the power of the Aphrodite with a dive-heavy composition, Jingwei late-game crit damage, plenty strong as well. And now Cthulhu, I think winless up until this point here, Mifflin. Maybe this pick has been a bit overvalued, at least by us in the caster booth. What's your read on this game? And then maybe some of the strength of these picks overall as well.
Well, I don't want to mince words. First off, let me get it off my chest because I have to say it. Back off MVP. Not Dardes, not Aphrodite, not SSG. Just back off the ability is the MVP because it absolutely decimated every single one of PK's fights. But as far as Cthulhu, Fidge, I can't back you on this one, man. That god is so strong in lane. He's going to be able to control it so well. It's not going to look good if your team's losing, and let's not lie to the people at home. PK was kind of just losing for the majority of this match. SSG had map dominance. They had a fantastic strategy that they came in with. They came into the game today with 2 separate strategies. Game 1, they said, all right, we're going to play Phase 2 meta. Lock me the Freya, and Boat's going to win us the game, and they were right. And then in Game 2, they said, all right, let's play SSG. Dardes, lock in the Afro, these chumps don't know what's coming, and they were right.
It worked out for them. This feels a little bit like a return to form for SSG in the second game in particular because they love to play around these team fight heavy type compositions. And I know that we're going to talk a lot about Dardes and Vote later on, so I want to give Nika and Cheerio their due credit because the early to mid game was almost entirely run by those two. The Xing Chen and the Robin were nightmares in the backline. Then when we got to the real late game, that was when the Jing Wei and the Aphrodite sort of started picking up that mantle. But I'm wondering if we're not giving this late game Jing Wei enough credit. Vote was a machine gun. He was shredding in the late game.
He was, and the space was afforded to him by that draft. They have Nika, Cheerio, and Rapper just running down the enemies. You don't have time to look at Vote, and by the time you have made eye contact with him, he's already slammed you thrice with autos. Yeah, and all of them are critting, because my man has almost infinite crit chance with that build. And he doesn't have to sacrifice Pen with the new Hunter builds. I mean, we like to talk about magical Hunters because they are the flavor of the week right now with Ring of Hecate. But the second that we see these slight changes, the slight nerfs come into the Mage ADC builds in this next upcoming patch, I think we're going to really see the strength of these Hunters come to fruition.
Yeah, I think we are too, man. Exactly as you said, Film not enabling a lot of this stuff right now in terms of providing the percent pen alongside with Atalanta's bow have opened these builds up. So Spacestation now up 2-0 over the Pittsburgh Knights. And I'm a bit surprised by this, and I really expected a somewhat more competitive match, but you heard Aggro say it towards the end of the call there. Maybe the Knights still a bit rusty, not quite ready to come out and play at this very high level just yet, but it's SSG, the ones that end up looking strong. It's also SSG and Cheerio in particular that are standing by for the interview.
They are indeed. Cheerio joining me now. Congratulations, Cheerio, first of all, on the win today. How do you feel about your performances so far? I mean, Rafa mentioned in the pre-game interview, you guys kind of took a break over the mid-season, you know, kind of chilled out a little bit. Do you feel like that was good for you guys mentally?
Yeah, for sure. We definitely did a break after MSI or like the split, the phase 1 tournament or whatever, because we lost, you know, able to like let's chill a bit. We took like 5-week break and then we started scrimming 2 weeks ago. And still trying to learn the meta. It's always fun playing on like a big patch.
And that's a real question for me is like, how do you feel about the meta? Do you think you've already solved it? Or is it, from what we can see from the Pro League, every team seems to have a different idea about what's good and bad?
I think I'm very happy with this meta right now. Like I kind of have a lot of gods that I know what other jungler is going to play, and I just pick to counter the enemy comp. So I'm happy with the meta right now. I feel like I can do a lot in this meta. Just in general, when it's a new meta, I feel like I play way better than when there's certain meta set, because I feel like I don't mind playing new gods or like new different gods. And yeah, I think it's gonna take a while for people to like actually for the meta set. For now, it's just gonna be you're gonna see maybe like every jungler being played at least once, like in the first 3-4 weeks, I think.
Well, one quick question for you that's interesting to me is, what scares you the most as a jungler right now? What is it, a specific item? Is it a specific god? What is it that, like, if Cheerio gets in the game and goes, oh no, it's that, you're going to be worried? Like, what do you not want to deal with?
I think, I'm not going to say what, but some of the magical ADCs, like, they limit the gods you can play. Like, you kind of have to build certain items in the first 3 slots. You have to build anti-heal in the first item, or you literally cannot go to the lane and can't fight. That's what I hate the most right now. Like, I don't want to play against a magical ADC with Hecate Typhons, and I don't have my brawler status. Like, you know, this guy is not dying. Can literally 1v4.
Well, it's a good way to bounce back after what happened in the mid-season. Cheerio, thanks so much for joining us today. And with that, I'm going to get back to my rave as we all get ready for the second set of the day.
Thank you.